Today we are starting the Roaring Twenties. We just got done with World War One, and following World War One, we are going to enter the 20s, where it's seemingly on the surface a great time in American history. The 1920s was a time of increased consumer buying. Consumers were buying up all kinds of new stuff, new cars, new appliances, a washing machine, refrigerator, stove. They're buying radios. Everything just seemed so great and wonderful. In your English class, you may have watched The Great Gatsby, and that kind of gives you a picture of what the 20s were like. But everything wasn't as great as it's going to seem on the surface, but we will get to that. So, people in the 20s began seeing themselves as needing things instead of just wanting them. They saw it as a need. I have to have the new stove. I have to have the new refrigerator. So, people started financing their purchases. Financing, while it can be a great thing, it can be a little bit of a slippery slope. I know you've all heard of people going into credit card debt. Well, think about this would be like credit card debt back in the 20s. So they have to have these new things. They have to have, all these things that I've been showing you, the stove. See, now here's a washing machine. But it's going to end up putting the people in a lot of debt, as you will see in just a minute here. Okay. Also, during the 20s, we are going to pass the 18th Amendment. The 18th Amendment forbid the manufacture, sale, and distribution of alcohol. The 18th Amendment is what's going to bring us into the time period that's known as Prohibition, when no alcohol is allowed. A prohibition is going to lead to an increase in organized crime. Here you see a picture of Al Capone and the mobsters. They're going to rise in power with their illegal bootlegging, where they're going to sell alcohol illegally because of prohibition, the speakeasies and all that. Also, during this time period, everything seems great. We've got some heroes to look up to. The 20s is known as the golden age of sports. This is when we have legendary home run king Babe Ruth. Other heroes of the country, we have Charles Lindbergh. He flew the first solo nonstop flight across the Atlantic Ocean. Women are getting a new role during this time period. They are becoming more liberated. Here are some pictures of the flappers. The flappers at the time, they're known for their energetic freedom, embracing a new lifestyle viewed by many at the time as outrageous. We consider them the first generation of independent American women. I know you've probably seen flapper costumes in stores and stuff around Halloween, but yes, these are the flappers. Also, for women, they start realizing they're equal to men, and everybody starts realizing it. The government also. The 19th Amendment is passed. It gives women suffrage, the right to vote. We see some firsts that occur for women during the 20s. You have Florence Allen, she's the first woman judge. You have Rebecca Felton, she's the first woman senator. Nellie Ross, the first woman governor. Gertrude Elderly, the first woman to swim across the English Channel. So big time for women during the 20s. So lots of positives there. During this period is when we are going to get the radio, and the radio starts bringing mass media to the public. The first radio broadcasts were used to relay the election results of the 1920 presidential election. In the 1920 presidential election, our 29th president was elected. That is Warren G. Harding. He is going to sweep a big part of the country. He takes 404 electoral votes, whereas his opponent only gets 127. By 1923, nearly 3 million Americans had radios. By 1925, there are 600 radio stations across the United States. Now, the radio is very important because it increases communication across the country. So we have nationwide communication. You are able to listen to the same news, to the same radio stories, the same advertising as everyone else across the country. So it's going to increase our communication. It helps to create a common cultural experience for Americans throughout the nation. Also increasing, our communication and spreading our culture is movies. Movies had a similar beginning. The first movies were silent films, but by the late 20s, the first talkies came out. The first movies with sound were available to audience. The very first ever talkie was The Jazz Singer. Here's a poster for The Jazz Singer down here. Movies were a unifying force on national culture because now you are seeing the same things as everyone else across the country. You're seeing the styles that the actors and actresses are wearing, which is, setting the trends. You're seeing the activities they're engaged in. You're seeing the products they're using. You're seeing, where they're traveling to, what they're eating, and it creates, a unifying culture. We are all wanting to be a part, have the same things. The 20s are also known for, sorry, went too far, the Jazz Age. Jazz was the first true American music. It was born in New Orleans. Jazz was so influential that the 20s are often referred to as the Jazz Age. You have a picture of Louis Armstrong up here, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong. These are some of your jazz musicians. He is a trumpet player, he is a singer. I know you have all heard the song What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. So he is a perfect example of the Jazz Age. We have the Harlem Renaissance, which was an artistic explosion that came out in Harlem, New York, out of Black culture, where you have a lot of Black writers, artists, musicians, photographers, poets, scholars. They're here in Harlem, and this was an artistic movement that came out of Harlem. In literature, you've probably read some of the poems by Langston Hughes. He was a 1920s poet. He wrote about the joys and hardships of working class Black lives. This is one poem that I really like from Langston Hughes. I mean, he published a lot of poems. This is one of the ones I like. It was called Dreams. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow. So Langston Hughes is your example of a Harlem Renaissance producer. That is the 20s, and we will pick back up next with the Great Depression.